Gandalf. Voltage control.
Hey, what up, y'all? Welcome back to Voltage Controller TV. I am your host, Shiro aka Voltage Controller, and we are going to get right back into our Analog Four 4-year review. So, yeah, my perspective and the direction that I've been moving the channel in is kind of differentiating between influencer and artist. You know, I'm more on the side of artist, but there's also like this fine balance of being an influencer but also being an artist. But I would say that I lean more towards the artist end of the spectrum, but I do know my artistic decisions do influence some. So I'm finding a balance, and I also didn't want to just jump in with a lot of the other influencers and only promote, you know, new products the first, you know, week they come out, and then you never see them again. Like, that's not what I want to be associated with. So I've stayed, you know, kind of like away from music reviews. The duration of my 10 years in this industry, I've done very little reviews, largely because of that reason. So like, now that I've been in this longer, I found a perspective that is more beneficial to my audience. You know, my audience is made up of people that do what I do. So like, you know, this is a peer group. You know, I don't have fans. You know, I don't believe in that concept. I'm not a pop star. I don't want to be a pop star. You know, if anything, I have a lot of experience and I want to share that with y'all. So, you know, that's my perspective, is being a source of inspiration and information. If I could sum it, you know, up very simply, that would be it. So with that said, you know, let's get into this review of the Analog Four. And yeah, it's just incredible instrument. Once again, there's so many great channels that act as like video introduction and video manual. You know, you all know. You know, so I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna get in here and talk about all the specs and all the things that the measure baiters get excited for. Like, that's not my channel either. We're not gonna do that. So we're gonna speak about it from an artistic perspective. I'm gonna speak about the pros and cons, and then we're gonna get into some examples of how I've used this instrument for the past 4 years. So yeah, let's get into that. So yeah, so let's jump in and speak about the Analog Four. Just roughly go over some of the features and functions, not super detailed, because, you know, I already talked about that. So you know, we have 4 tracks, analog synth engines, great effects, arpeggiator. The screen is definitely improved from the MK1. I'm reviewing the MK2 version, and there's definitely an improvement on the screen. I hear that there's an improvement on the bass, but personally I haven't been able to hear the difference between MK1 low-end frequencies and MK2. Like, maybe on a scope it will look different, but to the ear, like, I'm not noticing much of a difference. But with that said, the thing that really drew me to the Analog Four, once again, you know, modular synth background, but, you know, wanting to, you know, like the same reason I love the Digitone, you know, being able to be modular in nature and save patches. Same way I feel about the Analog Four, but the difference being this is analog, so it really, you know, sounds and feels like my modular. You know, but I don't have to deal with the patch cables. I can save. I can try patch ideas out, save them. You know, I can you know, save sequences. This is one of the Elektron flagship instruments, so this has song mode. So it's just a really inspiring instrument. and whenever I get things, I always like to use them solo for at least, I would say, 2 weeks to a month to get really familiar with them. So I was really inspired by the sonic options. You know, of course, the Elektron sequencer. Like, you know, what can you say bad about that? You know, like, everybody loves the Elektron sequencer. A lot of other companies love the Elektron sequencer and find inspiration from it. So, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So it has that, along, you know, with the analog frequencies in this sound really good. pardon me, the filters are incredible. We have these, electron effects that we all know and love, the delay and the reverb. And yeah, it's just a really great, inspiring instrument, and it has a lot of flexibility. I would say for this one, like I was thinking about it, like as far as pros and cons, I can't think of too many cons for the Analog Four that are important. Like the only one that really comes to mind for me is I prefer the more flat form factor, excuse me, of the MK1 boxes, or like the Octatrack, even the Diggy series. They're all the same height and same size. I just, I don't know if it's like OCD or whatever. I just kind of like the look and feel of that, but that has no effect on the sound of it. So like that's just aesthetic. So to me, I think they really knocked this out the park on the Analog Four. Aesthetics aside, it's an excellent instrument, and that brings me to outside of it being, great synth engines, great effects and all that stuff. Another thing is we have to realize is it's a great MIDI sequencer, so you can control multiple MIDI devices with this as well, taking you out of the territory of just being a standalone synth to being a production center that you can use to excuse me, to control the electron gear. You can use to control your modular, or things like this TV remote that I can't seem to get to work. But anyway, all jokes aside, the Analog Four is excellent design, and mostly pros. The only con I can think of is the form factor. Not a fan, but doesn't stop me from using it. So the pros, the biggest pro, especially if you're on the fence and you want to move into a flagship Elektron analog instrument, you're like Analog Four or Analog Rhythm. I would always say both, but I couldn't get both when I got it, so I had to pick one. And I'm really into drums because I come from a hip hop background. I played drums in a marching band when I was a band nerd, dipped in polyester, and but I'm like, I love melody too. I love to be able to make ambient music, or if I'm in the mood, hip hop, or if I'm in the mood, jungle or experimental stuff. And it's like I could see where I could do that more on the Analog Four, so I chose the Analog Four. And one of the biggest pros is it's really flexible from melodic to rhythmic, so you can make really dope drum patches. And as of late, it's turned into my favorite analog drum machine. Like the Analog Four is my favorite analog drum machine. It's not even a drum machine, and that tends to happen with a lot of Elektron instruments. They tend to like take on the qualities of other things, and which makes them really flexible. So yeah, I guess what we'll do now, since I'm talking about the Analog Four from a excuse me, from a drum perspective, I'll give you some examples of how I've used it as a drum machine. Yes, as you can see, the Analog Four is very capable on drum machine duty, and so much so that when I was designing a lot of those sounds, it inspired me to create compositions, and I ended up recording an album called Ancestral Intelligence that was largely started as a lot of the sounds that I used on the Analog Four ended up becoming like foundations for the songs on that project. And yeah, that was the first project where I really dug in and used the Analog Four on rhythmic duties. I have some ambient projects where I used it heavily with the modular, but this was the first one where I really got to dig in and use it as a drum machine, and just like an experimental, sound sculpting device. It was a really fun project. So yeah, I'm gonna get into one of the videos from the recording session for Ancestral Intelligence. This composition is called, what's it called? Oh, Human versus Algorithm. Yeah, so check it out. Yeah, so as you can see, Analog Four quite capable of going into that IDM experimental end of the spectrum, without breaking a sweat. And since we're in the land of rhythmic, I also would like to talk about how it can be used. Using the Analog Four in the perspective of hip hop is dope because one, you have 4 tracks, so like you can have some decent drums. You can use 3 of the tracks for drums and 1 of the tracks for a bass line and have like a dope analog foundation for hip hop, and then build on top of that with a synthesis or whatever. You can play acoustic instruments over it. Sky's the limit. But it's really dope. Also, if any of you know, in hip hop, we have a technique where we layer drums. So like if you're working with samples, you have a kick drum, it needs to be reinforced with some more oomph. A lot of the times what we do is we'd find another drum sample and maybe shave off a little bit at the beginning so it doesn't have such a percussive attack, and just keep the boominess of it and combine those two and, fatten up our drums. So one of the ways I like to use the Analog Four is using the drum patches I make in there, which are analog, which are totally different sonic character than the sample, and you can really blend those sounds together, similar like you would in the analog rhythm, which is why I want one for that reason, because you can do that all in the same environment. But yeah, that's one dope way to use it. Another dope way that I use the Analog Four is it has some really thunderous bass. So a lot of times in hip hop, it's all about the foundation of rhythmic music is the drums and the bass. So I sometimes have drums coming from the diggy tack, which will be chopped up samples, and I'll rock a bass line on the Analog Four. And it just has its own sonic characteristics and qualities, and you can modulate stuff and just really color outside the confines of what we know as hip hop, and move into like the territory of mod bap or these hybrid versions of hip hop that have formed, since my friends and I started this mod bap movement. I really like to be a champion for that. And I have some more developments in the world of mod bap that I'm gonna share with y'all soon, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, so let's get into a couple of examples of how I use this for hip hop, and we shall return. So that brings us to another way that I like using the Analog 4, and it also shows the flexibility that it has, is using it for ambient music and back in the day, I used to do sound healing with my singing bowls and my modular, and sometimes it gets to be a little bit difficult to bring the modular and have a lot of patch cables and stuff, looking into yoga studios and stuff, and then also a lot of the times you want to have some control over the set, and a lot of times I started bringing the Analog 4 with me and using it for things like that, and it gets in a meditative space really easily. It's a synthesizer. It is whatever you make it to be. Just because it's marketed to be a groove box, and make techno and house and stuff, doesn't mean that it can't color outside the lines of that. So, again, that's what I have my channel here for. I do make that kind of music as well, but I like to show what these instruments can do outside of the genre that they're marketed in. That's kind of what I'm known for in this channel. And I appreciate y'all watching, and letting me share my knowledge, share my perspective with y'all. We're all sharing time together, and I definitely appreciate yours. And one of my jobs is to serve the people at my channel. It's not about look at me, it's look at we. And with that said, as I start doing more live streams, I want to start inviting a lot of the viewers, because a lot of my viewers are also musicians, many of which I'm a fan of, and you'll see me in the comments on their page as well. I'm not this too cool for school kind of person. I'm humble. I am confident. That's, as an artist, we're supposed to be confident, and that's something I was speaking about with one of my friends a few days ago, is how there seems to be this energy of uncertainty and being unsure of ourselves as artists. And I can understand that as a new artist, but I know way too many seasoned artists that aren't confident, and they should be. And given that I've walked this path for many years, I've gone through the stages of being, not speaking up and not being confident in my skill set because I didn't have a lot of time in. But as you gain more time and experience, you should be confident in what you do. And it doesn't, you have to know the difference between arrogance and confidence, because when I was shy, I used to find confident people abrasive, and I would think that they were like, braggadocious and on some look at me shit. And it's like, no, they just spend a lot of time acquiring a skill, or they're, talented at something, and they want to share it with the world, and they're confident in who they are, so it took time and experience for me to understand that. And it pains me to see artists that aren't confident in being themselves. It's like, how could you not be confident in being you? There's only one you. If you look at this universe as like a big puzzle, you are a unique piece in this puzzle to make this picture. Like, don't try to cram yourself into another puzzle piece. You're fucking up the picture. There's a place for you. Stand on your post in your position and be you. That's the one thing you can do where you can't make a mistake. You can't fuck up being yourself. So you should be confident in that, if nothing else. And if you haven't been doing music a long time, I tell a lot of my new students and people that I work with one-on-one via Zoom or in person, is if you started music 2 weeks ago, you have 2 weeks of experience that someone that started 2 days ago doesn't have. That's something that you should feel confident in. So I don't care if you started 2 hours ago. You could be like, you could do a review. I'm just getting into music. I'm going to Perfect Circuit, and I just bought this 2 hours ago. Let me share my experience. There's someone that's never been to Perfect Circuit and that has never bought an instrument before, and you could, show them that whole trip and do an unboxing. That makes you an expert on my first 2 hours buying an instrument. Be confident in that. So, I hope this message finds you well, and I hope you take this energy and use it to better yourself, and because it makes the community better. If we have more confident people that like each other and collaborate, we'll have less hate and people that exclude you and that won't press the like button, won't support you. You know, the more we feel good about ourselves, the more we support each other. I have no problem supporting my fellow artists. I feel great about myself, and I feel great that I know greatness, and that greatness is resonating with each other. Like, I feel good when my friends are lit. Like, that means I'm doing something right. You know, I don't want a bunch of haters and people that are unsure of themselves around me. That means that I'm not projecting the right energy. You know, and I'm all about energy. You know, like people always talk about, you know, I'm the plug. Well, if you're the plug, I'm the power plant. You know, I don't want no limitations. And if you're the power plant, then I'm gonna be the sun. You know, and if you know, and if that's not good enough, I'll be the blackness that envelops everything and the support system that holds all planets in orbit. You know, we have the opportunity to be whatever we want. So be confident in that. And thanks for joining me. Peace and love.